that we have worked on. We have worked on advancing our case at the ICJ. We're at a point now, a crucial point, where the completion of that process would require leadership, experienced leadership. So as we move forward, we do need capable leadership to continue to navigate our economy to greater prosperity. It's not simple. Our economy is going to do well in the oil and gas sector, but there's a risk to it too. And everyone only speaks about the upside. We're the only party that speaks about the balancing of risk, that should oil prices move downwards, all of the promises made by the opposition, in fact, none of them could be kept. Our promises could be kept even with a moderation of international prices, because we've been at this before. We have the experience to navigate the tough economic situations. We did so when the country was bankrupt, and we brought it back to financial viability. And we have already been speaking extensively about how we create a diversified economy that will generate thousands of higher paying new jobs in the non-oil sector, as well as ensure greater long-term prosperity. So you do need the leadership to do that. As I said before, this is the worst time to take a risk on our case with Venezuela. We've been pursuing this case diligently. We're at a stage at the ICJ where you need to see that process through to the completion. And hopefully we will get, in fact, we're very positive that we will get a good outcome for Guyana that would settle this controversy once and for all with Venezuela. But that does not mean that Venezuela, given the rogue regime that operates in that country, will accept the outcome. They've said this before, and that means that you would have to have a government with the skill to build coalitions, international coalitions, that would allow you to rebuff any attempt by Venezuela to harm our territorial integrity and sovereignty. And that coalition is not just a coalition that would rebuff them through international or statements alone. You need to have a close working relationship with powers that have already publicly voiced their positions on this matter. Secretary Rubio is here. The United States of America made it clear that the Venezuelan attack, or any potential attack by Venezuela against Guyana, will be a bad day for Venezuela. So you need a leadership that can build this coalition. President Ali has demonstrated, and Mark Phillips, that they are capable of getting international support on this matter, and also working closely with the US and Canada and the French and everyone else to keep Venezuela at bay. I'm not sure any of the other political parties that are contesting now can do that at this critical moment for us. So we cannot take a risk on that. And then thirdly, we need to have a government in place that can translate economic prosperity into social benefits for our people, helping them to improve their lives and their children's lives. So these are gonna be the important issues of the future. And you only have a single party now with a clearly defined plan for that future, and it's the People's Progressive Party. So it's not arrogance when I say this, because it's a fact. It's a fact. Anyone who's assessed our plans carefully. You know, you get the occasional editorial from people about comparing the plans. And it's interesting for me to be lectured by someone who writes an editorial about budgeting and long-term planning when that person may not have even negotiated a loan. We've been in this for a long time. We've seen every single economic hardship from days when we didn't have money in the treasury to pay wages. We didn't have money in the treasury to even pay wages. We're scrounging around just to do that. Those were the tough days. And we've navigated this country safely through all of that into the most dynamic economy in the world now because of sticking to a viable plan, not being swayed by these populist positions that people are prone to take. And so I see these editorials and some of the articles coming from people who have never really done a budget before, but they comment on national budget, that is what I'm speaking of. But they give you detailed pointers as to how to do it. Never done it before. We've done it many times before. So these are just some of the things that I wanted to draw people's attention to again, because Ghanaians could put their future at risk. Think about this. If you're a young person and now you're one of the companies, the 1,000 odd companies that have local content certification under the Local Content Act to supply goods and services to the oil and gas sector. No law in place when the PPP took office to give you the preferences. APNU refused to pass the law, although we lobbied for it from opposition in the 2015 to 2020 period. We passed the law, we carved out benefits to Guyanese and opportunities to Guyanese. We said Exxon and all of these first-year contractors cannot hire or cannot rent from any other person but a Guyanese. They can't rent that's dwellings and office space. They can't rent transportation from any other person but a Guyanese or a Guyanese company. They can't hire security services or cleaning services or landscaping services, for that matter, from anyone else but a Guyanese company. We identify 40 such areas. That means now that only Guyanese can supply these services that were supplied by foreigners before the PPP got into office. So imagine you own one of these 1,000 companies that are listed there now. Why would you ever want to put that at risk? Because you know that the two other political parties or the major parties that are contesting, they are clueless about what to do in this regard. You know that the PPP government has made it clear that we're not only going to protect our companies and create more opportunities for them, but we intend to amend the law further to ensure that there are more carve-out for Guyanese companies. So instead of earning $700 million per year, these companies, they can grow maybe to $2 billion from the sector in the future. And these are only our people earning that. Because of that law now, we have about 10,000 Guyanese who are working in the sector directly, because there is a prohibition in the law which says that they have to submit, every oil and gas company have to submit now a local content plan for labor, and they have to show over time how they will replace, if they need foreign labor to work in these sectors, how over time they would replace these by Guyanese labor. And not just at the lower end, but right all the way up to management level because of that law. So why would the thousands who are working there ever want to put their future at risk with these infantile or the infantile position of these two political parties on the oil and gas sector? So those people have a vested interest in the continuity of a PPP civic government because they know we'll be deliberate and we'll work for Guyana like we did, and now they're benefiting from it. Thousands manufacturing things now in Guyana. If you look at the in Enmore, that bond that was there now, just started manufacturing components for the oil and gas sector. Soon the percentages of procurement for manufacturing in the new Local Content Act will climb so that we can then promote more manufacturing companies owned by Guyanese here. I don't want to get into too many details on that. Now, why would you, if you apply for a house lot, or you have a plot of land that's allocated to you but they're still putting in the infrastructure, or you want to build a home, ever want to take a risk? Because you know for sure that the PPP, once it says we're going to do it, you're going to get your house lot, and we've made it clear. People, we are clearing the backlog. We are hoping to clear the backlog in the next term. Everyone who would have gotten their allocation letter, the infrastructure would be in place, and they will get fully serviced lots. We've already made it clear we are going to give people grants to build, to assist them to build or to improve their homes. I've had tons of calls about this, people calling me to say, would the wiring in my home, we're a poor family, but we need to put in the wiring in the home, would that be covered by the grant? And I said, yes, the grant will cover, particularly for poor families. We've made it clear that in the next term, we want to do 40,000 house lots. That means more people can get core homes faster because we do 8,000 houses. That means about 8,000 houses per year. And those who have applied through the Young Professional Program, they will get it faster because many of them have been waiting. I've had a lot of complaints about the local contractors not doing the work on time for many of those people who already paid, and some of them are even paying a mortgage now, but they have not received their land as yet. They haven't completed building the young professional home. We have to change that now, and the method of work and the way we build. So better quality homes and done faster. You have to build maybe 20, 30 per day, that's it, to get to those numbers. And that means large scale management of this task. So why would anyone believe, who would go back to Norton's promise of, I'd help you to rent, or something like that? I don't even know what he promises. I've lost track of all of the things they've been saying. Every week they change what they're saying. I'd help you to rent to own, and all kinds of nonsense. So who would want to put that at risk? You know, with the PPP, we've been steady at this. It takes a while sometimes. Like doing the 50,000 house lots was a major undertaking. 300 billion is being spent on it. And they're being done by local contractors, all of the infrastructure work. And it's taken a bit longer because we had to do that. We had to do highways, we had to build schools, we had to build hospitals, we had to build bridges in the same capacity that APNU had, but they built nothing. And so, but you know for sure, once we put it on paper, it's going to be done. So why would you ever take a risk on the children money, the $50,000? Because APNU came in and promised to increase the children's money and then took away the 10,000, claiming, oh, they didn't have fiscal space. Well, they did have fiscal space, as we pointed out. You're risking the 50,000, much less, and you know, when we promise 200,000 per child, it will be done because that's how we operate. So who would even want to put the 50,000 at risk, much less believe anything they would say? APNU, huge promise, and all of the, and I see the other parties now, but in 2015, they said, oh, the PPP has too much of a tax burden on the population. We will lower taxes. $94 billion per year of increased taxes on the APNU. $94 billion, 200 plus taxes. The same administration that promised in 2015. And they had a more credible person than, it was President Granger at the helm of the government, who is much more credible than Norton. How could you ever believe that they wouldn't do it? Now, look at what we promised. We said we'll reverse the taxes, we did, and we said no new taxes in 5 years. The last 5 years, not a single new tax. And we are making that promise again for the future. So any Guyanese now, whether you're in the private sector or the public sector or anywhere else, you know that the PPP is saying no new taxes for 5 years. I don't have to worry that I'll be burdened with taxes because it's credible. They did not introduce a tax in 5 years. In fact, they're saying now they want to lower corporate tax, they want to lower personal income tax, and they want to lower taxes on vehicles and a whole range of items. Vehicles, outboard engines used by many people in the riverine areas, because we want to promote ownership, as particularly among young people and others. So you know for sure that's going to happen. This is something that, and if you look at not just lowering taxes, but we did things to keep more, allowing people to keep more money in their pockets by increasing thresholds, etc. I'm not going to go through all of that. So again, who wants to risk that? You have a clear promise from a credible party, no new taxes in 5 years. In fact, lowering of the taxes. Keeping the country safe. You have one political party that has a spokesperson who said that they will release all the prisoners if they win. How do you keep people safe in their own home? We're fighting now to keep people safe in their communities and in their homes against criminality, etc. They said it, not a single word, not a single word of denial from that party. Not a word of denial. They could have easily come out and say, this doesn't represent the view of the party, but they did not. And in fact, who will believe them? That's what they said. They will release all the prisoners if they win, because they're trying to appeal maybe to the prisoners' families for votes. But what about the rest of the country? And so that's what you're putting at risk. The division, the anti-business rhetoric that we hear. You could drive the country back and the private sector back into an era, into a mode or a behavior where they stop wanting to invest again if you take a risk with the future. So these are just some of the things I wanted to talk about, because people, these elections are not simple elections. You're staking a lot, your future on them. And really, the choices there are not really great choices that we have before us from the other side, the two parties. Now, I've had a lot of people call me in the last few days because people now have recognized that most likely, in fact, in their own minds, that the PPP will win the elections and win it in a big way. They recognize that. So they are calling us more about to clarify the benefits. So they're already gone past elections mentally, I think, and they're asking about the benefits after the elections. So people say, in your flyers, and in your manifesto, we see you talk about increased benefits for everyone, those on public assistance, those living with disability, public service wages and salary increases, help to all the sectors. So the part-time workers and the CSOs are saying, what about us? We didn't see our names mentioned. A lot of them have been calling me. So not because they were not mentioned by categories, they're considered public sector workers. So all public sector workers will see increases in benefits and remuneration. I just want to clarify for them because the SIP workers have been calling people, the CSOs, the part-time workers. They've been calling to find out whether they will get increases too. And the answer is yes. And for those part-time workers who have been expressing a desire to go on to full-time job, and the CSOs too, the answer is again yes, that we are looking to convert a lot of the part-time workers to full-time employees of the government. There's so many opportunities in the education sector or in the administration of local government or in healthcare. The hospitals we're building, we need 6,000 new workers in these hospitals. That would allow us to convert a lot of the people who are working now on a part-time basis into full-time jobs with the benefits there too. So if they're watching me, because I've seen my email, not email, my WhatsApp and the party's pages, they inundated with this sort of question because people know now that we're going to win the elections. So they want to find out if they're part of the benefits that will also come their way. The second thing is the sugar workers were finding out a bit more. I've seen a lot of queries from sugar workers and their families because they've been hearing again the rhetoric from APNU and the others that, oh, sugar will not survive, that we plan to get out of sugar completely, and the answer is no. That's a lie again. In fact, sugar will only survive if the PPP is in office. APNU made it clear they're going to shut down sugar. If you look at the Starbuck News was critical of us, saying we made some new promises to the sugar workers. So the sugar workers are aware of this because some of these political parties have a few people that they pay that sometimes go to the order line before the workers go into the back dam, and they spread a lot of lies. They've done this in the past. AFC did it a lot in 2015. WIN has paid some people to go down there in the order line and mislead a lot of the sugar workers. So they've been calling to clarify. They know instinctively in the sugar industry that the APNU would have shut down all of their estates, not just the few that they did shut down, but every other one. So I just want to say to the people, yes, the sugar will survive, but we will also create a whole range of new opportunities in those communities to create alternative jobs so people who are formerly employed in sugar or still employed in sugar, so they have choices. So in, for example, the Enmore area, the industrial estate will be open. That will have thousands of jobs that will create opportunities for people along the whole East Coast from all the way Victoria, Golden Grove, Nabaclis, Haslington, Enmore, Fowles, maybe all the way to Buxton, Annandale, Buxton, etc., because they would need thousands of workers to work on that industrial estate that we're spending billions now to build, and that would be open soon. So the Enmore sugar growing area in the past would benefit there. At Wales, you would have the completion of the gas to energy project, a big industrial complex rolled out there too. That will generate more opportunities for people who live on the West Bank and across the whole region 3. In Berbice, in the Skelton area, we've already made it clear Gaisuco has 26,000 acres of land, along with about nearly 40,000 acres of land that are owned by private, co-ops, and the road from Oriala to Molson Creek, which would open up more lands, that whole area would be developed into an agro-industrial complex. Thousands of acres of land. We have already pointed out about the expansion. Anyhow, let me don't go into all the details today. But that will create a ton of opportunities for those in the formal, the sugar growing areas too. So people have choices, their employment choices. And in fact, in the future, to operate these, we will have to bring in labor. We'd run out of labor from what I want to know. So I just wanted to say that. The vehicle one is a heavy one. Lots of clarification coming to the party pages. Four-door pickup seems to be a special thing. Like about 30% of the people who've been querying, will four-door pickup be also the taxes reduced on that? And the answer is yes. We were very specific about that promise because we heard this a lot from people, like young people who want to start small businesses too, because they may want to use the pickup, and if they can get a 0 interest rate loan, which will happen in the next term, they may be able to use the pickup to also help with the business that they're going to start, to create income for themselves. So I just wanted to do that. And the housing grant, will it be in the Amerindian communities too? Because in the Amerindian communities, they don't have individual plots of land in their name. So will they get the grant to build or to improve the homes? The answer is yes, again. So these were just some of the queries we had. Will we also ensure that everyone living with a disability are part of the public assistance program? The answer is yes, because public assistance will almost double to $40,000 per month. So these were some of the queries I've been getting a lot, and I just wanted today to use the press conference because many people would be looking to answer those questions. And the cash grant. So there's been a lot of things. The Mirror Waves put out their story. Ali hints at another cash grant before year end. And since then, everyone is calling to find out if this is a fake news or true. And the president did say that. So the president did say that. And Mark Phillips has been saying it earlier, but he's been saying, I think next year, Mark has been saying that on the platform. And the president did hint about this. This came out a few days ago. So they're asking, is this a fake? It's not fake. The president did say this. And yeah, those are some of the queries that I got. Now, I wanted to use this opportunity to speak to the first-time voters. I did so at Enmore, and I wish to do so again here today. So there is a significant number of people who will be voting for the first time. Some were as young as 13 years when we got into office in 2020. And now they're 80. And so many of them get most of their information about what is happening in the country from social media, because that generation spends a lot of time on social media. And often on sites that do not promote a sense of how far we have come, or economic and political history, or what is at stake. And people could easily be influenced to their own detriment by histrionics and by imagery. So someone posts a flashy image of himself or something that sounds catchy. And it could be fake. It could, they have no intention of doing what they post, but it could influence a lot of young people. And I want to urge those young people to think about their own future. What kind of country do I want to grow up in? I'm sure they will start off by telling you that they want to grow up in a country that is intact, that our borders are safe, and a country that is united, where people are judged on the basis of their work and not how they look or their religion or their gender. A country where all of the people, regardless of their race, can work together, put their shoulders to the wheel to make sure that we become prosperous. And there is only one political party today that is pushing this agenda of national unity and bringing people together, and that's the People's Progressive Party. Secondly, they would want to grow up in a country that is free, where their voices matter. And when political parties can steal your vote, they then operate with an impunity. Where they believe they own you, they then don't have to consult with you. And APNU has a track record of stealing elections. In 2020, many of those people may not have understood the gravity of the consequences that we would have faced had APNU succeeded in stealing the elections then. We would have lost our freedom. Look at Venezuela. Losing freedom had real consequences for people and their lives. And had they succeeded then, we probably never had another free and fair election in Guyana. And that means you lose your right to choose. As a young person, as any person, you want to safeguard those rights, because then you force political parties and governments to, by your right to choose or not choose, to force them to be accountable to you. They have to work for your support, not take you for granted. And that is something that is vital. And then thirdly, you have to focus on political parties that have clearly defined plans and that have had a track record of fulfilling their promises. So I'm hoping that many persons, not just young first-time voters, but many others, will take those into consideration. If you're a young person now, what does win offer you? What does win really offer you? Nothing practically. Look at the motley bunch of misfits that they've put together that are abusive, beating up women openly, or every day threatening to kill people, vilifying the president, his family, everybody. They work in this environment of vilifying people who don't support them. Look at the recent abuse by one of the Mohammeds against another member of the family, because that member of the family dared to support President Irfan Ali and pointed out that Azruddin Mohammed is not, well, it's not suitable to be president. And they know him from the inside. So they've not offered nothing to young people except a bit, some money, and then having to you have to fight for your money. And they believe that they can just buy people's votes, but nothing happens the day after. So an APNU, on the other hand, what are they going to offer? They've had a chance when that party was more credible. Young people have no future with them too. And so the first-time voters and others have to look at these things beyond just the social media imagery, etc. And that's good, that's fine. You know, people, it has entertainment value and everything else. And we have a free society. But I want to urge them to think seriously about their own futures. The second thing I want to address are these polls that will pop up from now until the election results are announced. And falsification of polls is also fake news, because it's designed to mislead, it's disinformation, and it's designed to influence voters' behaviors for a particular electoral outcome. So they could be generated in a back room. I saw a letter to the Kaichor News by an individual that no one knows. He said that a group of businessmen in New York paid for a poll done by some students at UG. And it's a scientific poll. Calling something scientific doesn't mean it's scientific. And it shows a particular outcome. And then this poll should be discussed widely. In a letter, not the findings, not methodology, nothing else. And then suddenly, on every opposition site, this gets reflected. And they have a program, I don't know what it's called, GlobeSpan or whatever, that discusses this, and it's all nonsense. And they all show one outcome, that the People's Progressive Party will not win the majority in the parliament. So Nigel Hughes and the others, they notice the rhetoric they're weighing in. Let's split the vote to have a hung parliament. Terence Campbell saying to PPP supporters, stay home. Stay home. The PPP supporters, you stay home so we could win in the APNU. He wants the PPP supporters to stay home so they could screw up the country again. Yes, so this is the same thing coming from everyone. It's designed to create a narrative out there that is false. So at one time, crowds matter. And when the PPP started getting huge crowds, and they're getting small numbers of people, then crowds cease to matter anymore. When Wynn was doing their photoshopping, right? And like in Linden, and they put up the same faces many times and created a big picture, they Photoshop people, and put up, they had a massive crowd in Linden a month or two ago. Crowd mattered at that time. They started off their rally and they said they had 25,000 people until someone flew the drone. And then you saw they had a few hundred people last night. But they had 25,000 people on their live feed. So if anyone, who is focused, like drank the Kool-Aid and just stick on their live feed, and then show the tight shots of only the speakers speaking, and then just pan the camera a little in the front row, you would actually believe it until that happened. So they're very schizophrenic. One time, their lives matter, the crowds matter, and another time, crowds don't matter. So they're going to create APNU, on that poll, APNU get a massive number of seats in the parliament and win. Now, this was APNU in 2020 in Corriverton. This was APNU in Corriverton last night. Look at this. But they will beat the PPP. These are, if you look at the polls and everything, they're going to do so well, displace the PPP. So they will take a crowd like Shortville crowd or the Kitty crowd and make, oh, it's crowd, but they're busting people. You will at least bust a couple people in here. Just bust the people. But if you don't have people to bust in, then you have a big problem. Because no one wants to associate with you. And the same thing with the Wynn crowd last night. If you look at the drone shot, go and look at the drone shot, and look at their live. About 25,000 people, more people than live in the whole Region 10. They had last night there. So much for these polls. You're going to see all of that discussion every day for the next few days. They've gone back now to a lot of the histrionics, as I said before. Some of the things they say are beyond insanity, really, on the platform now, as we get closer to the elections. And it's bewildering that so many people would still see what is being done and then go and make a serious comment that they could win the election. And I'm not saying this because of arrogance again. I'm saying this because right now across Guyana, I have thousands of activists walking the streets of this country, going to every home and taking our message to them. A message of progress, a message of hope, a message of national unity, They see it in our activists. They see people of every race in our teams going around together. And in every community. In the Amerindian communities, it's happening too. And here on the coastal communities. We're making calls to people at Hope and respectfully asking them to support us. This is done around the world. I saw some of them have a problem with that too. They have that we will call someone and say, you know, we value your vote so much, we're going to ask you to vote for us, not take it for granted. We'll call you and ask you and then listen to you. And that is what we're doing. There are lots of our activists who are doing that. And I see Mosley and the others, you know, trying to run down these people. So we're working for people's support and vote. The others take it for granted or believe they can just buy people's votes. Buy it. Now, I want to somehow consistent with this thing that we will be a minority government, there is this delusional view that if they can help APNU and win in the Amerindian communities, that the PPP will not win the majority. And that's false again. False again. And we'll get a chance to come back to this in the future. So let me show you how this is helped along by news media. The opposition is weak in making its case because it has no credibility whatsoever. So they help them along. I'll give you I look at two articles. Today, editorial in the Starbuck News. Now, the editorial of a newspaper, it's the newspaper's policy. So they can claim that it's written by someone else, but that when a newspaper publishes an editorial, that's the view of the newspaper. So today, there is this editorial, and it says equity in health. And it talks a lot about what's going on globally around health, about indigenous people's health. And then it comes down to Guyana. There is an overarching tendency to treat Amerindians like passive recipients of aid, rather than the custodians of knowledge, culture, and resilience that they actually are. This has been practiced by multiple administrations, the private sector, and at times even civil society. And then it goes on to say, every man, woman, and child in Ghana deserves the same chance at a healthy life, whether they live in Region 1 or Georgetown. We share that view. And talk about indigenous as though we're excluding indigenous people from health opportunities. What are the facts? What happened in the 2015 to 2020 period? Nothing. We know what happened already. Amerindians lost 2,000 jobs. The land titling program stopped. The development of health and education practically tanked because they cut budgets for the regions. Very little was spent on capital. We know what happened. But let's look at what is happening now in healthcare. we put out a flyer here, which is going to the Amerindian homes. And under the health sector here, it identifies, we can list all the things we've done. But right now, we're building 3 general hospitals are under construction of the same quality as the ones on the coast, that the 6 we have opened up, with greater capacity to do telemedicine. They're at Moruca, Cato, Moruca in Region 1, Cato in Region 8, and Lethem in Region 9. And soon we're going to award another one of a similar nature at Cameron in Region 7. We plan to upgrade the Bartica Hospital or build a new one there too. These are under construction. Over 17 billion for the 3 alone. They ignored all of that. Could have easily said that the government is modernizing health and it's doing this in an equitable manner, that people along the coast will see a massive improvement in healthcare, as well as people in the hinterland. We've eliminated the shortages of drugs in these areas that were so rampant when I was in opposition, going to these villages, talking to people. We've trained thousands of healthcare professionals. I've been meeting with them here in Georgetown. They're brought out, and we've done that. We have upgraded hundreds of health posts and health centers. So that is only on healthcare. But today they had to drag, we're treating the Amerindians badly in that regard too. So I can go down. And then what is interesting is that they said about this point, overarching tendency to treat Amerindians like passive recipients of aid. Now, who are the ones who are opposed to the LCDS funds? Starbuck was busy pushing those who were opposed to us earning that money. Now, over $14 billion in 3 years were handed over to the villages to spend as they see fit. That doesn't look like passive recipient of aids. That sounds like a very active engagement from the community, because these villages, 240 odd villages, receive 14 billion from LCDS, the LCDS funds alone, leaving out presidential grants, leaving out the tractors, leaving out the 36,000 solar panels that were done there, the 15 billion spent on roads, all of that. Leaving all of those out, 14 billion handed to these communities so that the council and the people of those villages will determine how they want to use the money. The villages themselves develop their village development plan. Those plans had to go to a meeting, a general meeting of each of these villages. You had to have at least 60% of the people there. They had to show the minutes, and we knew it was done through the concurrence or with the concurrence of the villages. And then the projects have been implemented, and we have over 2,000 projects that have been funded in these villages, transforming the villages through the spending of their own money. Since when have we treated Amerindians as only the recipient of aid? It's not just the schools and the hospitals and the roads. Here you have the communities that are given the money to spend as they see fit, 14 billion. And Stabrook, the same Stabrook was on the side of those who tried to block the funds. And today we get a lecture about treating Amerindians as just passive recipient of aid. It is out of respect for the leadership and the capability of these communities. They have been spending and accounting for and managing these projects on their own. and they made a decision on what they want to spend the money for. And then the remaining 80, well, they got about 20% of the funds. And the remaining 80% is going to fund the activities mainly along the coast, to safeguard the coast from flooding and all of that. That's how we are spending the LCDS money. So, you know, right across the coast, we're trying to climate-proof our country. So that editorial there. Then 2 days prior to that, another editorial. That's the newspaper policy, this time about Omega. And so they saw PPP's General Secretary's presentation is what the initial subject of this editorial. He made references to the indigenous community in particular. I want to talk to some of the people who are at home. So I guess at some rally, I said that. Because often when you go to a rally, you get to, there are lots of people who look at a rally, so you get a chance to speak to them. Everyone has a stake in these elections. If you're an Amerindian Guyanese, you think without the PPP in office what your life would be like. You had a taste of it between 2015 and 2020. And then I spoke about some of this. Was that an unfair question to people to think about what their lives would have been like without the PPP? Because they saw it. But they took issue with this now, and they visited a community now to disprove me about the progress made in Amerindian communities. They visited a community on the highway called Omega. So this afternoon before I came here, I spoke with a group of people from Omega. And it's a village that they're looking at a squatting area with about 25 households on the highway. And it's claimed that the area they're squatting is on private land. So they want land titles, they want title lands, and we're gonna work with them to get those titles. So from the information they gave me, seems as though the area they're squatting on, these 25 households. And they interviewed a couple of people, and the people said, oh, we don't have jobs. And I spoke with a number of the people there, and they said, yeah, we're working. There are lots of jobs on the highway, but sometimes it's more construction type jobs, and these kinds of jobs might not be necessarily like an office job. So they chose to go to this community of 25 households. That's a squatting community there. Of course, those people are important too. But you're going to talk about jobs today when so many more people are working than were working before, when 5,000 Amerindians through the part-time work and the CSOs now have a job, a government job alone in the Amerindian communities that they didn't have in 2020. When these projects are generating thousands of jobs in the Amerindian communities, not everyone has a job. We made it clear that the coastal areas have seen more jobs generated, particularly here in Region 4 than other places. We have labor shortages. But you're going to judge us on jobs coming out from what we had under APNU, especially since 5,000 Amerindians are now earning a sum of money from the Treasury that they were not earning in 2020. And then go to that community there and talk about transformation, a community of 25 households. You go to some communities in Region 9 and right across the country. You go to Mabaruma and see all the roads in the settlement. That's $600 million, 3 kilometers of road going around the settlement, and going all the way now to Wauna. We're already at Hosororo. And we built a secondary school there for over $1 billion for the children in that area. And you're going to talk about development because they go to Omega on the highway, and PP is not doing enough for Amerindians. You go to the villages and in in the Rupunoni, and you will see even paved roads in some of the villages themselves. You talk about the tractors and the help for agriculture. Each village has gotten a tractor. 216 villages, a tractor and trailer. They've had help with agriculture. As I said before, so many other things, I can list them. So they've gone back to the same team about, oh, the Amerindians are not getting enough help from the PP, and go to Omega to try to disprove me that Amerindian communities have made progress in the 5 years under the PP. They would see this massive change across the Amerindian communities. If you go, you see it visibly, talk to the two shows and the others. You go to the villages. Many of you have had the interviews, seen the interviews from the two shows themselves talking about progress in their villages when they came to the NTC, what they're doing, the changes there for Equebana School, the one at Karasabai, many secondary schools, new dormitories being built, new hospitals, many roads, all sorts of things happening in these communities. And they go to Omega, Sabbath News, and did an editorial on Omega here to say, oh, PPP not doing enough for Amerindians, because they want to fit in with the same APNU win narrative, the APNU win narrative to focus on Amerindians. It is Sabbath News openly campaigning. And it comes from the editorials. It's not a news article. This is editorial. This is the newspaper's position. So I can easily go on to talk about this. We're not just fighting the opposition. You're fighting these haters. They come from a group, they don't feel good for the country when our people are making progress. When we're united, they seem to believe that they can lecture the editorial or the Starbuck News and some of the others, like the Christopher Rams of our society. They can lecture about good governance. They don't want to see our people united and strong. They feel they're sour people for our country. They're from a different generation that just can't just feel good for changes in Guyana and our people making progress. These are just some of the things I wanted to talk about. There have been a lot of focus this week on domestic violence, and it's something again that we, if you look there, the manifesto, we have to not just strengthen the laws, we have to, coming back at this, we have to change the culture. We have to ensure that it's not acceptable in any quarter for this to happen. And that's why we've made it clear in the next term we have to not just work in the school through the civic program, to work at a very young age with people to promote values that are really important to the growth of our society, a more humane society. But immediately we have to start doing what the President promised, that is working with our religious leaders and the NGOs to try to get ahead of this. It happens too often, and it's happening in such a brutal way that it stuns the country. It's really grotesque sometimes what we see in Guyana. It's barbaric, medieval type of violence. And it has no place in a modern society or a humane society. Barbaric and medieval. Those are the only ways I can think of about this, the violence. So to end, as I said before, this is the last press conference before the elections. Doesn't mean this is the last time I'll speak to the media before the elections, but I want to urge there are PPP supporters who are looking and others who are well-wishers to make sure that you already vote. There are lots of people who've been calling me, calling to Freedom House. I forgot, but I should have gotten a WhatsApp number to announce here today. So you can call in to that number should you need any help to move. A lot of people have been calling, like some people from Region 1, they want to go back. They're in Georgetown, they want to go back and vote. People from Region 3 who now have to go to Region 5 to vote. There are lots of them who did not take a transfer. They keep calling Freedom House and inundating us. I want to assure them that if they have any such difficulty, contact our activists on the ground or come to Freedom House or contact us through one of our party pages. We'll put up a WhatsApp number soon and they will get the help to go. I want to urge people to make sure that they turn out very early on election day. Do not worry about the so-called threats from the other side. That's the usual thing. When they see a defeat staring them in the election, they always start using threatening language. APNU has done this in its entire history, and I saw the win candidate doing the same sort of thing now. But he's very tight with APNU, so he borrows from their playbook a lot, and therefore no one should worry unduly about this. We've been assured by the security forces that they can deal with any attempt to disrupt the poll. GCOM has stated it's ready. We are ready as a political party. I therefore want to urge people to not to listen to the naysayers, etc. It's about your future. Don't take a risk with it. Thank you very much. So it's interesting now, suddenly APNU is saying that a vote for win is a vote for the PPP. We have been at this for, what, 4 months, 5 months now? And not a word of criticism from APNU of win. So I'm wondering what's changing now, or what has changed. Did their fallout? Was not enough money not delivered? Or it's just another ploy? Because most people in the People's Progressive Party's base understand that WIN will collaborate with APNU, and that is why they have not criticized them. You know this instinctively. People in Guyana are not stupid. So they know the party that has been pointing out the criminality of the Mohammeds has been the People's Progressive Party. And they have, the WIN party has only been criticizing and lying about the PPP. You know, we sanction them, we're vindictive against them. They never said anything bad about the 5 years of APNU. Or, you know, the practical destruction of the country or their attempt to steal elections. So they never criticized APNU or AFC. And APNU for 4 months did not say a word about them. And now Norton was saying up to 3 weeks ago he'll reserve his criticism. Well, we're 4 days away from the elections. So clearly the numbers, their original calculation that a collaboration with WIN could see the PPP be a minority government, I think maybe they've had other advice now that the PPP is going to win the majority and significantly so. And they're now fighting back for their own position in terms of how much seats they share with WIN, how many seats they share with WIN. So that original calculation, I think that WIN could dent the PPP enough to cause a minority government. I think they have had a late reassessment of that. And that is why now you see them frantically going around the place. Henry Jeffrey even saying, vote race. You know, they're panicked all the time. Henry Jeffrey even was on the platform saying, vote race, the elections. So that's how I see it. But any sensible Guyanese would know that if they felt that way, why didn't they say it for the past 4 months? Why didn't they speak about, suddenly they think Mohammed is corrupt? Why didn't they say it for 4 months? Why did the Mohammeds not say anything about APNU and their track record? A lot of the camp, they were deep collaboration. Look at how many ministers and members of parliament. You remember Mohammed said he will be taking people from the PPP and from APNU? Well, who did he take from the PPP? No, couldn't be Brian Max or Doggy or Fatah. But he took, what's her name? Two ministers of the last government. I forgot their names. Tabitha and, no, Natasha's a member of parliament. The other one, Don Hastings, and then a member of parliament too. So it's a tight cola. They were sharing personnel. And I'm sure Primus used to get instructions from Congress Place too. Because when I see the criticism of Jagdeo, it's the same thing that APNU used to say about me all their lives. I see the Mohammed saying the same thing. So they were sharing, they had a common playbook. They were setting up each other's camps in Essequibo Coast, Queenstown. We caught them and they ran in a building when we saw the WIN people setting up the tent for APNU's meeting. We knew of this before. So they were sharing when they probably thought that they could bring the PPP down in a minority government. But now, clearly, they've reworked their numbers. They've seen it, and they're not stupid people too. Although sometimes they act that way. Yeah.
Dr. Jagdeo, we got our race for daybreak news.
Now I have to deal with the Mohammeds, yes.
Moments ago, GCOM PNCR appointed commissioners staged a walkout while discussions about Monday's elections were happening. What contingency plan does your party have in place to ensure that the PNC, who seems to have seen the writing on the wall, does not derail Monday's elections?
Well, this is typical of those appointed by the PNC. And so it's not surprising that they walked out. But GCOM has to do its work, and there's a provision when there's a walkout, that if the next meeting, if they're given appropriate notice and they don't show up, then the proceedings, the business of GCOM can continue. So I hope that GCOM continues the work to be prepared to host the polls. APNU is in great confusion. On the morning of the discipline services vote, they had sent in a spreadsheet with people to be accredited to accompany the boxes. And half of the people didn't show up. And they had to replace them at the last minute. We could have objected with a last minute replacement because I gather some of them even showed up without accreditation to be polling agents for the party. But we said it doesn't matter. Once they're there, let them be there so they can see that the poll is conducted fairly. But they're in a mass of confusion, so I wouldn't put it past them to do a walk-around. Yeah.
Dr. Jagdeo, from Livewire News. Just 4 hours ago, the APNU posted a video with the caption, "Vote for the smaller parties is the vote for the PPP to continue corruption." How would you respond to this, given that no members of your party are a part of any of the smaller parties contesting in this upcoming elections?
So a vote for Nigel Hughes is a vote for the PPP now. They're getting really from, I think it's becoming more absurd by the day. So really, as I said before, it's beyond insanity what they're saying. And I think they're just losing it. So Nigel Hughes is saying, split the vote. But I think he was speaking to PPP supporters. Terence Campbell said to PPP supporters, you stay home so we could win the elections. Now, APNU is putting out a statement. 4 months they were silent on Mohammed. Now they realize he's the most corrupt person in Guyana, 3 days before the elections. They're all working together and it's falling apart because obviously the new figures emerged. The new figures emerged which showed that their initial hope, which was working together would have brought the PPP below 50% in Parliament, is not going to succeed any longer. That the PPP is going to cross that threshold by a significant number. And now the madness has started. They started cannibalizing on each other now. And so that's a reflection of madness that's taking place in the opposition camp. It's in total disarray. They're in disarray in these camps. Dysfunctional often. They're very dysfunctional, including in the Win party. You have 20 people making statements. You don't know what's policy. All over the place. Then Hannah cussing out for 20 other people. Mohammed saying some things that you'd question his sanity too. Oh, people, I was the president since 2020. People called me president, so I had to run. Look at the interview with Starbuck News. Starbuck News gave him a free pass again. You know, Starbuck, he was the president. They sent him some questions, and he said, you know, people, where I went wrong, people would ask him, when did you think about running? And he said, you know, people used to call me president since I'm going around. You know, people call you all sorts of numbers, things when they want your money. They call you God even, if they want a raise from you. And that sort of thing we have, contemplate that having to deal with a Maduro or represent us at the UN. I can't even think of that possibility. So, there you have it.
Dr. Jagdeo, why is your party
So I saw Brian Max posting that he was going to come to Freedom House to my press conference today. So I think you chased him off, right? He didn't. I didn't see him show up here today, but obviously we have a no snoring policy here in Freedom House. So the thing is that we so so let's get back to this. We have not downplayed. In fact, we are the only political party that has pointed out that this link is a serious one. And we're saying, how to the media, how come you're concerned about everything Venezuela? How come you're concerned about Venezuelan threats to our sovereignty, and you write about this extensively in every single area, but you exclude this one issue? Why don't you follow it to the logical conclusion? You recall me being questioned here whether we told the congressmen what to say when they pointed out that the Mohammeds are Maduro's puppet and linked to the Maduro. I said here, we did not tell the congressmen what to say. In fact, it would be really presumptuous for us to think we could tell a US congressman what he must write or what statement he must issue or tweet. So I pointed out at that time that they may be privy to information that we ourselves don't have, because they have an entire national intelligence apparatus in the United States of America that often would send reports to the State Department, and congressmen are briefed on those reports. So clearly, there had to be some smoke there. There had to be some smoke there, because they would not issue statements that are so categorical if they didn't hear something that we didn't hear. I then subsequently, in fact, Minister Todd then subsequently pointed out that the Mohammeds were in the embassy, the Venezuelan embassy. And this raised a lot of red flags, given the context that the congressman had defined. So Minister Todd has to look out for our safety on our border through diplomacy. He summoned the ambassador, and the ambassador said, yes, who was there. The Mohammeds then issued a statement. Azruddin Mohammed did not go to the embassy. And I pointed out, you think if Nazar Mohammed went to the embassy, who is the father, that Azruddin and Hannah would not know about it? So I said, the same way you issue a denial about Azruddin Mohammed, why don't you deny that Nazar Mohammed went? And until today's silence, 2 weeks have passed, they refuse to answer that question, because the moment they answer the question truthfully, then the next question would be, what was he doing there? You couldn't go to Venezuela on vacation. Nobody wants to go there on vacation. So what were you doing there? And that would be the next question. And they're mortified. They're fearful about answering that question. So, but the media left it. It's just there. I said, end my career now by just denying that you went there. He has not denied, he refused to answer it. They Hannah Mohammed and Azruddin will talk about everything under the sun and abuse everyone, but would not answer that simple question. Was Nazar Mohammed in the Venezuelan embassy? Did he visit the Venezuelan embassy? One simple answer, yes, no. Why? The answer is, the question is why. And so you're saying we're downplaying it. You in the media have been downplaying it. Members of the media, we have done what we can. APNU didn't say a word about it. On another issue that threatens sovereignty, you remember they said we're not doing enough. They walked out of Parliament when we had a bill before, a motion before Parliament condemning Venezuela. Are we not doing enough? And here you have US congressmen saying their Mohammeds are tied to Maduro and they're not saying a word about it. And we've seen the help when that Facebook page, Essecubo is Ours, was established. We believe that the Venezuelans and Venezuelan trolls were helping the Mohammeds run it. They were running that page. Essecubo is Ours. So it plays on it. It looks like, you know, Guyanese, but really, it's a double play on the word. And that, if you go on, I don't know if the page is still up. Now, we may have taken it down, but on that, in that regard, what's this? Yes, I saw this. They asked that already about the commissioners walking out. So, go and see if the page is still there and see all the comments. And including occasionally you see someone, a couple of people like break into Spanish on the page and stuff like that. So don't blame the PPP for this.
Dr. Jagdeo, the relationship between Nazar Mohammed and the Mohammeds and Maduro is so much so that the foreign minister decided to call in the ambassador to ask him, what is it that the PPP has seen or evidence that the PPP has that would cause such concern? And why is that evidence not made public? You have even placed your career on the line.
But the thing is that the ambassadors confirmed that he attended. You're asking for evidence. That's what he's saying. Show me evidence that I attended. I hope if the evidence emerges, then what story are we going to hear about that after that? But he's refused to answer. It's a simple yes, no answer. Did you go or not to the embassy? And because the next question would be, if the answer is yes, what were you doing there? Were you looking for a vacation in Caracas? Or did you go there to get instructions or to receive information? And so that is what the media will not pursue. That is what the media in Guyana will not pursue. They could easily go when they walk around the place and have these meetings, go and ask them about it. Just like you do normally, media people do. They just say, you know, until now we have not seen a clarification from the Mohammed camp. You can talk about everything under the sun, but did Nazar Mohammed go to the embassy? And they would say, and if so, why? Oh, simple question from the media. They would not answer. So I believe we have done our part in already bringing to the matter to the fore. And this, yes, go on.
In your lengthy political career, have you ever seen a political party contest elections and don't even have a prime ministerial candidate, a placement of a prime ministerial candidate? Have you ever experienced that before? Is it something or as is being touted in the public, Maduro is intended on choosing the prime ministerial candidate from our army.
Yeah. Well, I don't know who touted that Maduro is choosing their prime ministerial candidate. But it is the arrogance and the impunity with which they operate, even worse than the PNC. So the tradition in Guyana, you don't need to name vice presidential candidate, but the tradition in Guyana has been that you will name a prime ministerial candidate so that people know that should anything go wrong with the president, who will assume, according to our constitution, the office of president. Now, this camp, we are 3 days away, 4 days away from elections. They have not done so as yet, and again the media has allowed this to be a sitting issue. Every day Starbuck News says this man promises more, some aluminium factory now he wants to build it somewhere. But they can't deal with that one question and stick with it. Every day positive things around media, etc. But not a single, ask him, when are you gonna do this? And the answer is, I believe, you would see they'll probably rush to do it over the next couple of days once we start talking about it. But I have no confidence that even if he names someone now, that he's not, he might be doing it out of convenience. I believe this is a family enterprise, that using people, that he wants to put his entire family, if he wins the elections. But of course, he's not going to win the elections. But he wants to put his family in charge of everything. Everything. That's it. It is an enterprise. It's running on arrogance, impunity, criminality. That's the word surrounding this group. Nothing about service to people or country or anything else. He's always the victim of PPP, etc. And not talking about the stealing that he has done. They talk about abuse of state resources. This man is, he is using $11 billion of stolen money from the state to fund his campaign. And people don't talk about that. And I see, by the way, I see now Capital News, they still exist. This Capital News is still around. They surfaced maybe around election time. I didn't see them for a long time, but they put out something, oh, President Ali is abusing state resources because he traveled in the helicopter. And I just want them to refer to Ramjatan, what Ramjatan said here. We don't take government money to buy our flags or our caps or our t-shirts like APNU did. We didn't take government money to put up any billboard. It's people's money that the party raised with to do this stuff. But the president is the president, so they complain about it, and this is what Ramjatan said. Use of state resources for APNU FCA campaign, an advantage of incumbency. This is what Ramjatan said, and direct quote, "It is ridiculous to make the argument that a president of a country cannot use state resources to get him to one end of the country. It's also ludicrous to make that point that it is an abuse of state resources. He is president of Guyana until another president is sworn in, and if he wants to use the helicopter, there's nothing wrong about that," Ramjatan said. Now suddenly it becomes abuse of state resources. Capital News and all of the others running with it. They didn't see when APNU was paying for, through the LCDS money, they used the LCDS money that we had left, that we earned. They didn't earn a cent in the 5 years. We left a lot of money from the the Norwegian agreement, they were using it to so-called put up the green billboard, but all the billboards were for campaign purposes. Buying the green t-shirts for the LCDS and then sending it to Congress Place from the office of the president and other places. Using, and I'm saying it's green because LCDS money, and buying thousands of t-shirts in 2020 and sending it there. You remember just before the $50 million that they spent on buying tickets to a concert or something like that and sharing it out for free? That's the kind of abuse you had then. But suddenly you get these flotsams floating around with articles. They're worried about, oh, we're making calls to people asking them about for their votes. Because we respect the voters. That's why we're asking them. And we're talking to them and we say, what we've done, please judge us on that. Would you support us? What's wrong in doing that? And if people say no, then we accept it. And if they say yes, then we move on to. Suddenly they're clutching at straws.
Yeah,
Good afternoon.
I'd like to ask, you spoke about the promises delivered over the past 5 years and your plans for the years ahead once re-elected. Could you perhaps tell us about what you consider your failures and shortcomings over the past 5 years and how will you work to address those?
So the key areas that we have, there are lots of people, particularly in the housing sector. So we had a great success, but we also have not been able to move faster because we reserve all of the opportunities for local people. And in some areas, our local people don't have the capacity to particularly build houses. We are hoping to get more core homes built, like maybe 10,000 core homes built. And the young professional homes, maybe about 3,000 of those. We didn't achieve it. Although we didn't promise it, we only promised 50,000 house lots, but we are hoping that we could have gotten those built. We awarded to local people, hoping that they would be able to start small bit, well, they'll get involved in contracting, make some money, and they would deliver at the pace at which we anticipated. They failed. And so that's something I spoke of earlier. That is one thing we have to reassess. If we're now gonna do 40,000 homes, we have to do it very, very differently. We have to assess our capacity across the country. So some of our local people are stretched to the max. And then some of the smaller people that we're trying to incubate, you can't give them big projects because you can't give them to build 100 homes if they've never built anything. You have to start them off like with maybe a small contract and then grow that capacity. So that is one issue that we have to look at carefully. Two, we have to make sure that some of the government agencies are more responsive and accountable to people. We are hoping that with the use of technology now, that we'll be able to do so. We've gone to many, many cases where people make complaints, but they never got the complaints addressed because they got killed off at the department level by it's sitting on someone's desk or at the NDC. Even some NDCs, when people complain about problems there, we put in some information officers, and many of those information officers who should have reported directly to the minister got captured by the NDCs and they stopped reporting on the problems. So we have to have a better system to address the public's complaint. directly, because as we said before, we're going to strengthen the local government bodies, put more resources there, but they have to do the things that they are supposed to do. Pick up the garbage. They have to keep the drains clean. They have to cut the bush in the cemeteries and stuff like that. They don't do these things. And sometimes they sit on the money. You know, the 30 million for this year, we moved from 5 million to 30 million in subvention. You know, many of the NDCs have even started their spending for the year as yet. We're already in August, and they haven't even touched a cent of the 30 million that they got in subvention, which was supposed to be for clearing the drains and helping them to pick up the garbage and all of those things. So greater efficiency at every level of the government. One area that we didn't promise but we have to work on is financial inclusion. We found that in many, many communities, rural communities, particularly in Amerindian areas, they don't have access to banks and banking services. And so they can't get money paid to them like you go to many of the communities across Guyana. You know, they can't open a bank account. That is why fintech and use of the technology now would allow people to do digital banking using their phones, etc., in remote areas. That's something that personally I would like to see improve. We've had a great growth in internet, but again in the hinterland communities is telecommunication. We liberalized telecommunication, got more fiber optic cables in, the cost of bandwidth came up. But when I go to Latam, I have a GT&T phone, I can't use it. I can't use my GT&T phone. I went there to Latam the other day. All I'm getting sometimes is E, it goes to E, I can't get LTE, and then sometimes I can't even get any connectivity. That's a tongue in Guyana. They have a license for the whole of the country. If you have a national license, you should be providing services. And that's why I've spoken about this. The Public Utilities Commission should have a hearing. People, when they pay, they should get a particular quality of service. This sort of thing. GPL is another issue. Electricity. We've had a tough time to keep pace with the growing demand for electricity and making the transfer. APNU did absolutely nothing. You check. Nothing on the grids, and didn't buy any power plant, didn't put in no capacity that you could speak of. So we came back into office with the old system that was there. We left in 2015. Nothing, but the demand is changing now. People, more hotels, more homes, etc. are being built, more businesses. And then they had killed the project we had hoped to come on stream. That was 2017, the hydropower. And then they also didn't use the $85 million that we left in the account at the IDB to do the solar project. It was left there for the hydro, but they could have used it for solar. They didn't use it. We're using it now. We struggle. We've been struggling. We put in nearly 200 megawatts of capacity through the power ships and buying new plants. We're upgrading the grid. We're struggling. Hopefully, we'll be able to solve that definitively in the next term. These are some of the things just some of them that we would have hoped to improve.
I just want to quickly follow up on something you mentioned, the calls from the party. Could you perhaps say how the numbers on the list, how did the party get those numbers?
Yeah, we acquire those numbers from various sources. That's all I'm going to say. We acquired the number from various sources.
And concerns about data privacy, would you be able to say if person's data given to the government would have been protected at all times?
Data is always protected. We have a new law and what we pass, and the data is protected. Yes. And I find it abhorrent that members of the media would harass some of the people, like Mosley did with that young lady. We gave her the number to call. She didn't, they just harassing the poor young girl for making calls. Yeah.
Your party leadership recently met with OAS a few days ago on the elections. Were any concerns raised by the party? How did that meeting go?
I met with I've not had a meeting with the OASs yet. I know the president met with them. The meeting, from what I heard, went extremely well. I met with the Commonwealth group, and that meeting went also very, very, very good. I think the observers are ready to observe the elections. They're in good spirit from all that I've had. They had personal interaction, and from the reports I've seen, there have not been any major issue that they have discovered that could affect the outcome of the elections. They are satisfied with a few things. One, that there is no padding of the voters list. That's the key finding. And two, that the campaign, in spite of some of the outlier incidents, has been going peacefully and well so far. And people have been able to freely disseminate their views, their party's views and their personal views.
Did the party raise any concerns with the observers?
No, the thing is, those are being worked through at the GCOM level, not any major issue.
On the matter of GCOM, how satisfied is the party with GCOM's preparations for the day?
Well, GCOM said it's ready. From all they've done so far, we've seen from the preparation of the ballots to discipline services voting, they've done so efficiently and transparently. And we have, at this point in time, no reason to believe that they would not be ready for Monday. So they've assured us, like they have done with every other political party, that they are prepared to conduct these elections, and we have to believe them. Thank you very much. Oh, you wanted? Oh, go on. Yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Slow start, please. I think this is a question as it relates to offshore workers. I think I brought this up with GCOM, but we didn't get a solid answer. As it relates to those workers and being offshore, do you think, or can you comment and say if systems should be put in place for those persons to get to vote?
You see, this is a matter entirely for GCOM. They will make that decision there. That is best. The question should be asked of GCOM. We want every Guyanese to vote. We want every Guyanese to vote, but special arrangements for particular groups to vote is not a party task. It is a task for GCOM. And I know some time back, when this matter came up, there was a view that if they opened the door for one group, then other groups may also require special arrangements to vote. So, but that question would be best answered by GCOM and not the political parties. We want everyone to vote. And I want to urge people to give their employees the time enough to vote, or to go back and home and vote. Every employer. Thank you. No, I'll let